Just one second. All right. So I'm going to switch this around. Yeah, as was mentioned by Yuri, I learned just a couple of Danish words so that we could talk today. So det er en stor fornøjelse. Jeg har mulighed til at snakke med jer. Det er dejligt, at jeg kan gøre det på dansk. Jeg boede i Danmark godt lang tid siden. Det var imellem 91 og 92, så det var, jeg er gammel. Men jeg er meget begejstret, at jeg har mulighed til at snakke om visuel tænkning med jer. Det er meget spændende for mig. So yeah, you see, I learned just a little bit of Danish for this project today.
Yeah, right.
No, I really, really love Denmark, and it is exciting for me to be able to present and to sort of do this in Danish. Definitely, it's a combination of two things that I love most in the world. I really love talking about visual thinking, and I really love Denmark, down to just the pølse that you can buy on the street, the little Danish hot dog with, the fried onions and the little, the agurksalat and everything. It's like, I love almost everything about your crazy country. And it is one of my favorite places on earth. So with that, let's try this one more time. And I'm going to go like this. And then I'm going to switch this around. And now I can share the screen and everything's going to work beautifully. So here we go. Share. And y'all can see my screen here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Good day, Vina. I think I've got my windows here that I just want to move. There we go. Okay. That's better. All right. So as mentioned, we're XPLANE. XPLANE is a design consultancy. We've been around since 1993, which is a long time. When we say design consultancy, every project that XPLANE will do will have, at the bare minimum, a visual designer and a consultant working together, or some combination of those two roles. We've been doing this for a very long time. XPLANE has had a lot of evolutions in its own past, and I'll talk a little bit about our work in a moment, but just a little bit more about me. Yeah, and that was, we're kind of at the intersection of design and culture and strategy. Visual thinking is our lifeblood and how we work, but there's, the kind of core of what XPLANE does is help people change and help organizations change. So this is something that, it's super simple. You've probably seen it before, the change lever, but we try to figure out what is the future state of this organization? What is the vision that you're trying to accomplish? What are you trying to make happen with this group? And as you try and figure out what are the interventions, what's the pressure we need to put on this lever to move us from here to here. What's going to make people change? And sometimes you have organizations that are very adaptive. We do a lot of work with Nike. And Nike is an amazing company because they're always like, what can we do next? Let's try this new thing. This is really fun. They're working really fast. They're always innovating. And so for them, their capacity for change is probably actually, a little bit this way, right? It doesn't take as much pressure to move this box from here to there. However, we also work with companies that are struggling. And in some cases, the culture inside the company is broken, people are fighting, and it's a little harder for change to happen. Some of the companies that we work with are legacy car companies in the United States that have been making things the same way for 75 years, and they don't want to change. So change is at the core of the work that we do at XPLANE. And when we try to diagram the change, this is another framework that we use all the time that's really helpful in getting people to imagine what the change is that we're trying to make happen. So this is the activation curve, we call it. And anytime there's a change, there are these three broad phases of of how that change is accepted and understood. So first, you hear about the change. It's like, oh, okay, I heard that this thing is happening. And in that level, you might have awareness that sort of leads to, okay, I understand it's changing. Maybe I'll even accept that there's a change happening in my organization. From there, you move up to believe it. And now it's like, all right, I believe that it's happening. I'm going to start to try to acquire it, maybe even apply it, internalize it in my world so that it makes sense to me. And then from there, you would go to like live it. So now we're living this change. We feel like this is embedded in how we work. So it's integrated into how I work. This is the new business as usual. And you can kind of like look into the future and see what's the next change. Like you're comfortable with this. This is just how we work. And now we're ready to sort of change again. So that's kind of the core of XPLANE's work. Every time we do a project, these elements are very much a part of it. We do it for all, oh yeah, I've got to build, yeah, whatever. I'll get a little bit more with some examples of what that looks like for organizations in a second. This is me. There's both, I'm including lots of tags here. XPLANE Design Consultancy is XPLANE's tag. Mine is @FreshBeast. Same for Twitter. So we were, yeah, this is just giving you a little background on who I am. Yuri did not mention that I am not normal. So I have been flying a lot, not so much recently because of current events in the world. But after as much flying as I had done, I began taking the air sickness bags in the plane and decorating them and then leaving them as a gift. I've never seen anyone throw up on an airplane, but it seems like those bags are too small to actually do that. But regardless, if someone were to grab one of, like if you grab the air sickness bag to throw up and it's beautiful, there's like, that's a nice gift, right? So I've been, I do, these are obviously none of these are work projects. This is just some stuff that I do on the side. I'll give you a quick history of my background. So I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. My father was a professor in Salt Lake City. So I grew up in Salt Lake City, attended the University of Utah. While I was going to school, I went to Denmark, so that we had got to include the little Danish excursion, which was some of the best 2 years of my life. And then moved back to Boston. Kind of in the late 90s, I was involved in making art with pixels and drawing, doing early sort of web 1.0 applications. There I had my son who was 10.6 pounds, my daughter who was 11.4. This is large, very large children. My daughter's name is Karina, by the way. I heard the name in Denmark. I loved it, and it suits her well. Then I moved back to, from the East Coast in Boston, moved back to the Northwest, did some agency work. And then in 2008, I started working at XPLANE. So, and all of the different jobs that I had that kind of led up to that, prepared me for kind of the best combination of drawing, thinking, expressing myself. It was really fun doing that work. So I'm just going to share a couple of examples of the kind of work XPLANE does, and then I'll get into a little bit more how and why. So we've done a lot of work for Icann, which is the International Association of Assigned Names and Numbers. They kind of run the library of the internet. So we've done a lot of work with them in helping them explain to the world how the internet works and who runs it. It was really fun work that we did with them, very political, lots of different stakeholders. And it all starts with sort of understanding what they're trying to tell. And a kind of fun side story about that is at one point, the root of the internet was owned by America, that it began as an American experiment. And the ownership of Icann, this level of the internet, was switching to an international group. And an American elected official told us, you're making this too easy for people to understand. We need this to be harder. I thought that was kind of a funny moment in which visual thinking was actually doing its job a little bit too well. So little examples of, we do silly animations like, everybody does, little things to kind of help people see and understand stuff. Yeah, these are all just a couple of examples of trying to help people understand that, the internet as a network of networks is most effective when there are not a lot of constraints or borders around it. And there's, yeah, this sort of helping people see and understand it. We've also done a number of videos. We don't have to wait for this one. It was cute though. Fun cards, we like to do fun stuff. One last kind of cool example. So this was a project we did with Red Bull, and they were looking to, like every so often, that they have all of these sponsored athletes who represent their brand. And their brand is about giving people wings, about elevating people, about helping them achieve things they've never accomplished before. And what you see here on the right is my sketch of one of their sponsored athletes named Will Gadd. And he had a dream that it would be really cool to climb Niagara Falls. Now, those familiar with America, one of the biggest waterfalls in North America, and it straddles the border between the US and Canada. And it's the permissions, as you can imagine, it's like two different governments. You'd have to get the Canadian government to approve and the American government to approve. And he's an ice climber. So he thought, well, if we have one of these crazy weather events, a polar vortex, then I could actually climb up Niagara Falls. And so I drew this when everyone said, well, that's a crazy idea. Well, it'll never happen. But when you draw it, when you visualize it, it can be real. And we drew that. We made the drawing. He took it to the mayor of New York, the governor of New York. They were able to get all the permissions they needed, and they promised that there was a really good chance he wouldn't die. So we were able to sort of turn the drawing into reality. So it's one of the things that's really fun about visual thinking, right? Is that once people see the idea, right, they see the sketch, then there's this opportunity to make it real. So one of the powers of visual thinking is just helping people's imagination, right? You can help them visualize something that wasn't there before. So a couple of thoughts around visual thinking. It's a process that helps people think and collaborate. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not very good at drawing. That's okay. You don't have to be good at drawing. It's about thinking. And your drawing will kind of come along the more practice you get. Like any skill, you get better over time if you work at it. We use a lot of tools and methods inside of visual thinking that help leverage the most powerful capability for understanding, which is our vision. Our ability to see is just amazing. And I'll talk a little bit about that for a second. But that's enough of me talking about myself. Let's have a quick introduction, like icebreaker exercise. What I want to do here is let's talk about how I met my love. And what I'd love for everyone to do is just, if you have blank white paper, that would be the best way to do this. And when I say how I met my love, this doesn't have to be romantic. Think of a personal love. It could be a person, it could be an object, it could be a pet. You don't have to be in a relationship. But draw how that love happened. So let's take about 5 minutes and draw a personal love story of our own. So think about, it can be a person, it can be, that really great toaster that you just love, or whatever. But that'll be our first little activity. All right, so I know people are still finishing, and I'll just quickly go over my drawing tool isn't great here. What I'm doing is I'm presenting through Apple Keynote, and so I don't have as much control over the drawing as I would if I were drawing on paper, but it's also fun to share this way, and so I think you get a sense of the story. So here's my love story. In scene one, my daughter, this is Karina, she was at school, and a friend said, "Hey, I have a snake, but I'm moving, and my new home doesn't have room for this snake. So can you take care of the snake for me?" And in the second scene, there's me holding the snake, and it's my new little love. It is kind of silly, but we have this pet snake. He's a Mexican black king snake. His name is Crowley, and he is adorable. There's my little love story. I'll stop sharing for just a moment because I think it'd be cool to see if there are other people who have stories that they want to share. So just one second. I'm going to go here. Stop for a second. Thank you. Okay. Great stories all around. So I'll jump back in and get to sharing my screen and get back to presenting. So I want to talk, I think a lot of you have heard some of this, so it's not going to take terribly long. But when I talked about visual thinking leveraging our most powerful method of understanding, the eye is an outgrowth of the brain. And so our eyes are hardwired to take in visual information. The neurons in the visual cortex take up 30%, whereas touch has 8, sound has 3. That our other senses are not as acute as our eyes in understanding our world and reacting to it. Some people say they are verbal learners, and that is true. Some people prefer learning words from words other than pictures. However, our brains sequence words individually. So that as you look at words, you hear these words, and somebody might say, right, there is, a angry snarling dog with teeth exposed and drooling, so look out. That doesn't actually have a lot of effect. But when you show people the picture, that you actually have a response that, the hairs on the back of your neck go up if you're afraid. And so that fear response is real. You're sort of reacting to visual stimuli. And images are translated simultaneously, that we don't have to decode what's in the image. Our brain is immediately reacting to what we see there. And so this is called the picture superiority effect. And what the sort of, for XPLANE's purposes, we see that people reach decisions faster. We get to conclude our meetings quicker. We get to move to action much faster. So that kind of talks a little bit about some of the science behind it. Now I want to talk about the language. So I spent time learning Danish. I can read music okay. I'm not great at it. I also learned some coding languages. If anyone's learned language, all of you, a lot of you learned English. Just about everybody on the call. And you think about sort of how you learn. You think about alphabet, words, grammar. You kind of start with understanding what are those basic elements of the alphabet. And one of the things that goes back and explains history is this concept of a visual alphabet. So if you're trying to communicate visually using visual language, what are the basic elements of the alphabet that compose that language? And so the first 3 elements are point, line, and arc. So and if you think about it, you can pretty much draw anything with those 3 first elements of this visual alphabet. Once you have those 3 pieces, you can pretty much run it from there. Angle is very useful. Spiral, sort of helpful. And then loop is another one that you would use. Circle, oval. We like to think of this as like the I shape. So that's football, American football. Triangle, rectangle, polygon, and cloud. So these are the 12 glyphs that we try to teach people who are new to visual thinking, who maybe didn't go to art school, who didn't have, that want to be able to sort of express themselves visually, but are afraid to. And we hear that all the time, right? People say, I only draw stick figures. I'm terrible at drawing. It's not my thing. And this is one of the ways that we try to familiarize people with feeling okay about drawing. So then when we start to put this together, we think about how we start drawing people. And everyone has their own method of doing this. I'm sure you've seen like a lot of people do sort of these star people that are really easy. Some people prefer just doing the straight like figure like this. We generally use box people. So the way we think about it is think about a box as the torso. And we usually think of the torso first, that part of the body, and then figure out, what's the action that this body is doing. So then we kind of think about the limbs, like what are the legs doing, what are the arms doing, and then we think about what the head's doing, and maybe a little like directional line to show where it's pointed. Using this methodology, it's not terribly hard to extend. As we start to think about like, what is the shape that the body's making if the body's running, right? So the torso is pitched forward like this. The arms are kind of moving back and in a couple different directions, going up and around, and the head's probably leaning down. And if we really want to sort of get some heavy expression here, we'll add that there's some sweatles, right? So a little like now this person's really exerting themselves. If we think about jumping, right? What is the motion of the body when somebody has jumped, right? That one of the things I really like basketball, and so you look at sort of the way the body stretches and contorts when somebody's playing basketball, right? There's almost a full extension of the arm, right? The hand is sort of around on that basketball. The head is up, so we kind of know where the basket is. They're up above the basket here, right? The legs are slightly bent because they've just jumped, right? And Michael Jordan would put his arm back like that because it just looked cool. But thinking about how, what are the elements that are set up, right? If you're sitting in a meeting, that's a very different perspective. In fact, most of the time when we draw meetings, we just go really quick, like there's a table and here's some bodies and here's some heads, boom, meeting, okay, done. So much of what we do in the way that XPLANE does visual thinking is we try to just get the basic elements quickly. Because frequently the way we work is we're in rooms with a lot of people, they're sharing their ideas, and we are trying to visually capture those ideas and synthesize them and make sense of them. So as we start to think about like how we extend these ideas and just show little elements that we think are important to help tell a visual story, right? That if this is somebody who's working in business, right, that a lot of people in business, we're still using that same kind of torso shape. Business people are always super confident, so they'll have their arms at the sides and out like this. And then, let's say it's a lady and she's got the power suit. So now this is a business person. At one point, it was kind of crazy. The way people used to dress, remember when we all went outside for work? We would actually go places. There was one project that we went to. It was an insurance company in New Jersey, and everyone dressed exactly the same. And the three women that were in the room had the exact same dark blue power suit that they were wearing. We were just like, come on, can't you relax a little bit, guys? Like we want this to be a free open space. There shouldn't be a dress code for women to work at this company. And then if we want to show somebody's a doctor, right, that there are lots of really easy clues that you can add to show that somebody's doing something, right? So if the doctor has the stethoscope that comes around one side and the other, and one of our quick things is like, the ponytail is always a good way of showing that somebody is, like more of a female type hair. Family, we'll just start going with a bunch of different size boxes. And show that they're all together, and they're all, they're all good, etc. So I'm going to skip just a couple of slides here because I want to kind of get to the next phase. I feel like people know a lot of these basic elements of visual thinking. One of our activities that we do, so XPLANE does a lot of paid workshops where we teach people and organizations a lot of these skills. So one of the things that's good for practice, right, is based on what we had just talked about in that visual thinking language, where we talked about dot, line, arc, angle, spiral, loop, and then we talked about circle, oval, triangle, polygon, house shape, and cloud. Like, we try to sort of build the elements. You know, we talked about those as our visual thinking alphabet. So how would you start to build these elements based on that alphabet, right? So if you're thinking coffee cup, right? So we talked about line, we talked about arc. Let's put another arc here. Maybe we'll put another line for decoration. And then a couple of wavy lines always means your coffee's hot, right? That these elements come together very quickly to start to make words, in the same way that, as I was learning, you know, there's the Danish alphabet plus all of your crazy A and the slash O and the Y sound, and the putting these sounds together helps you make words. That there was always, when I was in America, in Denmark, kids would always ask me to say and I do my best, but that's still a really hard set of vowels for an American to make, right? That's you guys, and so in the same way, you know, you're putting together these shapes, right? So laptop, there's a polygon. Let's skew the other polygon to give it a little sense of dimension. Maybe there's a little arc below to show that there's a bottom of that polygon. But then anytime you put, you know, a rectangle within a rectangle, now you've made a screen. It feels like a screen. So this is something that in our workshops we would ask people to run through. And so, but we don't have to take the time to do that activity, because I think that the activity that I want to get to is more fun. But this is how we would often run some of our workshops, as we're teaching these basic skills. So rather than share and discuss, this one's a little more fun. So what I'd like people to do is, if you have a sheet of paper or Post-its or whatever you have to draw on, or if you're doing it digitally, fine. But I have some poses, and based on this sort of simple construction of torso, head shape, arm shape, you know, just keep it really simple, leg shape. I want you to try and do these next couple of poses. And the other thing to remember as you're doing these poses that is helpful is, you know, if you think about context and where, you know, how a person is looking. If I want to show that a person is working on their computer screen, you know, the body is kind of like the back is somewhat bent, right? The back is bent, the arms come down, the legs move forward. Sometimes it's helpful to show that they're, you know, that's sort of the shape of the back of a chair. There's the bottom of the chair, come down, got a couple wheels, and then the desk comes forward. We've got them here, and then, you know, they've got their computer and they've got their coffee. So part of the reason I did this is, if you look, the arms and legs, the kind of thing that the box people allows people to do very quickly is, you know, that the arms and legs come from those corners of the box. So if you just know that there's 4 corners of a box, it does make it fairly easy to start to understand these poses. So I'd like to take about a minute for the next few poses. This should be kind of fun. Yeah, this was just saying grab some paper. But it's fun to think about the different shapes that bodies make. So take a minute. We'll take a minute with each of these, and you can kind of let's just draw these people making crazy poses, because this is another kind of good warm up. And as you kind of look at it and take it apart, right? What is the shape that the torso is making here, right? it's kind of, I'm totally cheating because I'm drawing directly on the image. But you look at that, that's the shape of the torso for the image of this character in this kind of different pose. The arm is coming out this direction. The other arm's coming out and down this direction. The head is forward, right? And their focus is this direction. This leg's coming off here. This leg's coming up and over. And then we're going to be talking about hands a little bit later. I'm going to be here for about the first half of our time. And so as you start to think about ways that you represent hands, there are a couple things that I always keep in mind. One of the things in human anatomy, right, that if your hands are forward, right, the thumbs are in, and that goes down. Once your hands turn out, right, so my hands are forward. Once your hands turn out, then your thumbs are on the outside. So part of it has to do with which direction your hands are turned. Is how you represent the hand. Usually when I'm doing visual thinking, if I need to show a hand, I'll try to be as just quick and abbreviated as I can. So like you see on the bottom there, I've got it moved around. Here I might show a couple fingers because it's stretched out and that's important to the pose. But I do try to think like a haiku, right? I want to do it in as few words as I need to be able to get the point across quickly so people can see it and understand it. All right. So here's our next pose. This one's hard because there's perspective. And one of the things to think about as you draw this is the perspective is this chair is going off in this direction, right? So you can see that direction of the chair. So how does that body line up in connection with how it's positioned on that chair? Like, what is the shape of the torso compared to the hands and the rest of the body? All right, we'll take about 10 more seconds on this one. All right, here's our next one. So here, right, this person's way up in the air. I think it's cocaine. I'm pretty sure he's got cocaine all over him. Don't worry about the cocaine, but think about the shape that the body's making.
It's an expensive footage.
So does XPLANE have customers in Colombia?
Well, yeah, no, I as I mentioned, Red Bull is a client, so they put a lot of good stuff in that Red Bull. Gives you lots of energy. Okay, this one is also hard because there is foreshortening. So when I went to school, I went to art school. I was going to be a studio painter. I was going to make fine art. That was sort of the original track that I went. And foreshortening is that effect of when you have a body coming toward you in perspective and the length of the limb is shorter than you expect it to be. One cheat for this one is if you start by drawing the laptop, that kind of can help you anchor the rest of the body, right? So once you kind of get that first shape, then you realize the torso is falling behind and is sort of moving like this. It is obscured by that laptop. So now I kind of see, I have a point of reference for where the body is, right? And then this arm is coming down and then forward. So it's kind of, these get more complicated as they move along, and then this leg is coming up from the torso and then out, and then the foot crosses over this direction. Who does this, by the way? Why would you be sitting on your snowboard smiling while you're working on a laptop? Like, come on. That's not real. The head's leaning forward. The nose is pointed this direction. comes out, and then the other foot's moving up this direction. So this, this is an advanced pose. It's also sometimes, you want to draw in the hair because, come on, she's got great hair. That can kind of help tell the story of the picture. All right, this one gets a little more progressive. I am coming to you from Portland, Oregon, which is one of the microbrewery capitals of the universe. We definitely, this is a very common scene, or at least was before COVID hit, of Northwestern people drinking their India Pale Ale, a beer brew that's very hoppy. That's a big, a big thing here. So now we've got 3 people, and once again, as you're drawing your characters, it can be helpful to kind of think about, a little bit of perspective with the object, right? That there's this big wooden table that they're sitting on. So it moves back in perspective, but that's sort of that way we start to know a little bit about like where we start to draw our characters from and where we figure out our poses. So we'll give people 2 minutes on this one because it's a little more complex. Give people a little bit more time. One of as facilitating with the superpowers that I have, it can also be tempting, to start to add some characters in the background. All right, looks like we're doing pretty good here. Last one, this one's crazy pants. So once again, there's a lot of different directions, but if you kind of start with where the torso is, understanding that this one's really challenging. It's 2 people in a really impressive pose. This will be our last little figure drawing project. As you're working on this, one of the reasons that XPLANE makes it important that we learn how to draw people in different poses, and the reason for this kind of exercise is people are drawn to people. As humans, when I talked about the power of our eyes, when we see a person, it is more relatable to us than if we see an abstract concept. I think that you can imagine all of the bad PowerPoints that you've sat through where people are just going after bullet point after bullet point after bullet point and showing charts and graphs that have a lot of graph information. And that's that sometimes you need that. You need to have quantifiable data to show things. But when you're looking at humans, you're more drawn to that because you relate to it, that you are a human. And so as a person, you see, identify with people. Now, obviously, I can't really necessarily identify with these people. I've never done whatever it is they're doing right there. That looks kind of intense. But the practice of being able to draw people in various poses, a lot of the work that XPLANE does, we try to show what people, we're trying to create change, as I mentioned earlier. And if you can see the person doing the thing that we want the future behavior to look like, if we can see the vision of that and how people are working differently, that inspires us and helps us, imagine that and make that change happen. So I think that, yeah, everybody's work was really cool. Christian's, yours looks awesome. I love that you're sharing digitally as you go through. It's really fun to see this. And I feel like there's so much that I want to share with you guys. We're going to have to do this again sometime, because there's a lot that I need to get through. And of course, my day job starts in a little bit. It's early on the West Coast, but I have to start being creative director for some projects to explain in a little bit. But I wanted to, the next thing I wanted to jump into, and I'll go back to sharing my screen so you can tell what I'm talking about. But that was really, really fun seeing all your work. So I'm going to go back to sharing my desktop, and I'm going to go back to my keynote. All right. So all of you got a good grade on that. You all passed. This is another quick little, when we're trying to teach people basics of visual thinking, and I think a lot of you are more than basic at this. These are a couple of quick like tips and tricks that we like to share out. A little bit of a recap of some of the other things that we would be drawing and the way we put together to people quickly. When we start to think about, so now we've learned some words and we can say some words visually. Now I want to talk quickly about grammar, right? And when we think about learning grammar, right, it's about putting relationships between our drawings, right? So a lot of times you do have that sort of like basic relationship. It's just something that's tied together. Or maybe it's a one-way relationship. It goes from one section to the other. Or maybe it's bi-directional. This relationship has, it goes both directions. Or maybe there's sort of an indirect and a direct. So dotted line, solid line. Or maybe between the relationship, there's confusion or ambiguity. To make this even loopier and crazier. Or in some cases, right, maybe the relationship is an overlap, right? That there's sort of that these things influence each other in this way. But as you kind of get from learning the basic language and being able to draw these initial lines, you get into grammar, and that's kind of leading to vision. So XPLANE does a lot of vision work with organizations. And vision is where you're going. It's the North Star, right? In the sense that as people on the seas would see that the North Star is in the same position all the time. It's really important to give people a vision for where their organization is going. And this is something that's just, it's really important. I think this is a really nice example of a vision map. When you're trying to make something new, draw the picture of the thing that you're trying to help people see and understand. In this case, this map includes, it goes like ninja level and has lots of cool details, but just sort of at a high level, right? Part of what we're showing in this map is first the pain state. What's not working right now? Well, we have all of these things that aren't working and it sucks. And that has to do with our resource management side. There's also, on the pain side over here, on the cost, we've got these challenges. So we have sort of our this is our bad state that we're setting up, like what's not working. And then as we move in, right, now we see like, oh, now we have, if we use this cool thing, we get this gain state. We've got the better state for how things are working. And this is delivered by the single network delivery system. There's all of these cool elements that are part of that. And there's even a little bit of a roadmap to showing like how this is going to be rolling out for people. So this vision is really telling people a lot in the form of a picture that they could never really get if it were a PowerPoint or if it were a Word document, right? That you're helping them see the vision for where they're going. This was a piece that I did for XPLANE in 2012. We were trying to create our 3-year vision for 2015. And so in this case, we were trying to say, well, in 2015, we want to operate sustainably. We want to be global and agile. We want to deliver programs, big work, not just single projects. I want to protect our legacy, lead by teaching and learning, be a great place to work, be visible, engaged, and respected. And at the core of it is that we create and help people manage change. Like that's always been a part of who we are. So this was one of the things that we did internally. This was a vision where this company said they really wanted a blueprint. And so we went all out on delivering a blueprint for them. This particular company felt like the current state of their company was that they had people living on these disparate islands that were set out, way far away from each other, and they wanted to move them all closer to each other, where before they had, movie companies and television networks and toy companies and theme parks, and they all had separate infrastructure. They all had separate, search engines. They all had separate news engines. They all had separate apps. They all had separate ways to connect. So by moving them together, we're able to put something, together that allows people to get to, this sort of singular vision of the truth. So this is the secret one that nobody outside of XPLANE has seen yet, but right now we're sort of working on what could be our 2030 vision for where we want to go. So part of the way that we wanted to divide this is, for our customers, for our employees, for the world, and for the owners, for the people who own our company. So this is talking about, we want to lead the world in leading change. We want to be better at working on our products and the training that we deliver. We serve transformation anywhere in the world. And that we hire the best people from wherever they are, and they become a part of our team. We're organized around our customers, making sure that everything we do is responding to customer needs. You can develop your expertise here. We give 5% back for the world for social good. A B Corp is an American designation of a company that is sustainable and invests a certain amount in its employees and other things like that. Studio X is sort of the way we share our work with the world, and we imagine that maybe becoming a nonprofit part of our company that allows us to do projects that aren't just profit driven, but for greater social good in the world. We also want to build ourselves to be resilient, so that the next time something like COVID hits, that we're ready, and that we're a role model of a conscious business. And that in 10 years we're employee owned entirely, that we don't have any, the ownership of our company is different. So that kind of shows you a little bit of how I look at vision. And when I think about vision mapping, what it might look like. I just want to show you what the process looks like when we're doing it with a client. So in this case, we were doing something about identity theft. This was for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And so this was the sketch that we came to at the end of the day in the room after a day of visual thinking exercises. So we did a ton of work to get to here, but this is the way we kind of understood that there were these different sectors: financial, geopolitical, and individuals and organizations. And this was kind of our bad drawing at the end of the first day. And then we sort of asked a couple questions, and then we said, all right, here's our next version of the drawing. Let's move this forward. And so this was kind of our next concept sketch. And so this is very typical of, we think we understand the quadrants that we're talking about. We've got, the individual here and the political here and the organization and the financial here. And we're starting to kind of see this picture. Then of course the client gives us a lot of feedback. Move this thing over here, flip the axis. Like, we try to take feedback in real time, and we like to draw while we're presenting so that they know that we hear what they're saying. So moving forward now, we start to iterate this a little further and try and get our copy in place so that we can show them a little more clearly what we're doing. This is the design phase. We also call this our blueprint. So in the same way that an architectural blueprint kind of shows you where everything's going to go, this is sort of the blueprint level of a vision that we would do. And then we would illustrate the final version. So this is kind of a typical vision for identity theft. This is really a piece that's helping people see and understand how this affects these different factors, that it's not that different from the first version that we drew in the room, right? That it has all of those same basic elements, but we also, we spent some time in making sure it was really beautiful, and this was a part of a set of communications that we did. So what I want to jump into next is I want you to build your vision. This can be a vision for your family, for a part of your work, It can be something that you have, sort of been thinking like, this is my own 5-year vision. But the way that I would recommend going about it, I always think that Post-it notes are the best way to like come up with ideas. So if you start with some Post-it notes, or if you have, even if you just jot those down as separate ideas, the process that I'd like us to go through is first collect some big ideas, right? Figure out what the main big ideas are around your vision. And then after we do that, you want to see how those ideas relate. So your first thought, and I'll kind of draw this what I'm talking about out, right? Usually I sort of figure out like, what are these ideas? What do they look like? And then I try to figure out, all right, so how do they connect? What are the ways that these ideas connect? And ideally, right, there's some sort of framework that helps me understand how these ideas connect. Often with vision, you want to show a framework that is telling people what, right? A big vision is not telling them exactly why, but you're helping them see this thing that doesn't exist. So as you talk about vision, right, we want to show people, this is this ecosystem that I want you to understand, and it's different and it's big. So once you kind of figure out like, what are the elements, how do they connect, then you start to draw like, you put it all together. And so how do these images relate? What is there a big organizing force that's going to help people see and understand it? But that's when you start to, sort of put it all together. And now you understand that, this vision is actually more of a layer cake. So we understand like, at the top there's this, at the bottom there's this, and here's our big vision. Here's how this is all going to be set up. So this is a kind of a slightly longer individual activity. I'd like us to take about 10 minutes and just come up with a vision map as we think about it, and then we'll kind of come back and share out. Does that make sense? Are my instructions clear enough? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, flot. Okay, så værsgo. Tegne så hurtigt som du kan, og så snakkes vi om 10 minutter.
And T is 20 minutes, correct?
Come on, Yuri. Come on, you've been there for a while.
Yes, and my Danish friends will not let me lie. It's 20 minutes.
All right. Do we want to do 10 or 20?
No, 10. I just...
Okay, all right.
That was a bad joke.
Okay, let's take 10, and then we'll have some time to share out. I'm going to give us some music just to help the time pass.
Tim, a question.
Yes.
I can see that you used some sort of a Babylon Tower metaphor for the vision. Do you have a couple of templates for the vision? Some of us could reuse if we're struggling coming up with the metaphor ourselves. Like, I don't know, maybe some really popular templates to go like this, like a multi-layer pie or something like that. Just maybe a few ideas what it could be. What could we reuse as a metaphor for the final vision?
Yeah, let me do something really quick. So I'm going to stop my share just one second, because I have, whoops. So XPLANE, we do a lot of these visual thinking workshops, and as a part of what we do have like a lot of like ways that we help people see and understand the world. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to be a little bit overkill of an answer to your question, by the way. But I think that it'll make sense. So let me get back to sharing. All right. So we're going to go back to sharing Keynote. And so while people are working on this, so this is a little bit insane, but I'll help make sense of it. All right, so I am sharing my screen. So all I have to do is hit play. And by the way, for my setup, I've got my iPad connected to my Keynote that I'm running from my laptop. So the way that I'm drawing in real time is I'm drawing on my iPad, and I'm drawing using the annotation and note-taking tool in Keynote so I'm presenting from my iPad to my desktop. So that's what allows me to be able to draw directly on the screen. And it's not the world's best drawing tool, but it is effective for, I think, being able to be engaging. I would much rather draw using Procreate or some other app or just on paper. But this way, for a virtual session, it's good enough. So you asked the question about some frameworks. Oh, I lost my connection. Help. That was very startling. All right, so I'm going to jump back into Keynote. Give it just a sec. Okay. And I think I can start again. Okay. So we have lots and lots of frameworks that we would use to base an idea on. And a vision is not often a process, so I'm going to skip past this one. Sometimes it is a comparison. Most often a vision is an ecosystem. And so an ecosystem is usually, when you think of sharing a system, we're answering the question what. And one of the things that it's really interesting. It wants to, my Keynote is crashing on me, which it's never done before, but you know what? It's, it's always fun to have new things happen. All right, so let's try this again. All right. So what I was saying in the slide that I was hoping to share here was around ecosystems. There we go. All right. So with ecosystems, you have there are lots of different ways to show an ecosystem, but usually a vision is based on one of these organizing principles where you're showing a series of related elements and you're answering the question, what is it? That a good vision is helping people see a bold future that is different from the present. So one of the things that we always have to remind people of when we're working with them is be bold. Like don't just solve the problems that you know are there today. Imagine that you're working in a different world, in a different marketplace, and that you're thinking big and bold about some provocative big steps that you're going to take between now and then. That sometimes when we're working with companies that are really challenged right now, we first do a visualization of the current state. So in that case, it might be a comparison where we're helping them understand why they need to make the change. So these are a few examples of current state, future state. But usually the vision, as we work on it, is just a single drawing, and that's kind of what I'm hoping that we do here, is just think about what are the elements of that future state, how do they relate, and then these three modes of seeing it, the schematic, the metaphor, and the literal. Those are all one of the things that the reason that we have those set up is people think differently about different things. So if you think about the way people look at, basic logic, that relates to the schematic side, right? Your basic sort of like, oh, I understand how this works based on my logical understanding of this thing. That's sort of a schematic view. if people think in more sort of grand pictures, then a metaphor helps tell the story of what you're doing. Sometimes a CEO, right? They don't want to talk about just the kind of schematic view. They want to say, here's the big picture of the thing. We're climbing up a mountain, and we're right now at this point, but we're eventually going to make it to the top of the mountain. So that's sort of a metaphoric use of an ecosystem, whereas a literal ecosystem is just showing, right? A map is an ecosystem. It's showing interconnected things, and it's a literal translation of what's there, right? Sometimes you show that sort of like cutaway building or a solar system. That's a literal ecosystem. The sort of exploded diagram of a piece that you would get in your IKEA furniture that kind of shows you how those elements fit together. That's a literal view of an ecosystem. So I went overboard, didn't I? This is too much.
No, it's actually, it's a lot of examples, but that's exactly what I was hoping to get from you, to get some examples, because, I mean, many of us are at the state when we would struggle to come up with a metaphorical explanation of this ecosystem for the vision. But with this set of examples, we could just pick one we think is nice and play with it. And that's one of the good ways to learn, just to copy and then make a sense of it. So,
Totally.
Fantastic.
Totally.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what I was hoping for. And much more, of course, but that's always good. That's always good to have more.
All right, so let's take a few more minutes, see if we can come up with our vision map. I'll also go back and share some of the other. Oops, now I'm in the wrong book. There we go. Okay. So I thought it might be helpful also to go back and look at some of the ways that I approach this. This one's a little more, obviously, this is much more detailed than you would get to in 10 minutes, but you can see the underlying framework is fairly simple. This one we're explained, so we used an X as the organizing shape with the kind of change lever in the middle. This one is sort of that current pain, future gain, and showing like in the current state, the islands were far apart. In the future state, they all come together in a happy, theme park. And this one is a fairly simple one, but we wanted to divide it by our 4 customers. So as our customers, our employees, the world, and our owners, that was sort of the thinking behind this one. And I guess there was this one as well that was kind of showing, we sort of figured individuals, organizations, financial, global, and so that was sort of the thinking behind this one. All right. So I know people are still going to be drawing, but and I'm not sure if we went over the full schedule for everybody on the call, but I have another 12 minutes before I actually need to start doing my day job. So hopefully, as people start to come to some sort of quick resolution with their vision drawings, we can share out a little bit. But I'd also love to answer some questions